Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to have a look at how to start off using Excel and go over some basic fundamentals. Now, I know you're doing this in your MIT lab, but I did want to go through and kind of ask you guys to build your own personal financial statement. And I do this every course because I find it's a good way to start off getting students to build a financial spreadsheet that pertains to themselves. And something that's extremely personal to all of us is our own personal budgets. And what I do in this video and this class is to encourage people to build their budget, follow their budget along, and then really learn how Excel can answer questions for you at this, like right here in chapter 1, at a very basic level, to help you understand where your money is going, for example. All right, so to get started, I'm going to assume you guys can open up Excel, and I just want to go over a couple of the key components of the screen to start with. Up in this area, this is called the Quick Access Toolbar, and it allows you to have some of your key basic features like save your existing file, undo, redo, and then there's this little pull down right here, and you can go in here and you can customize it and add all sorts of new stuff. Like let's say you do you want a new workbook, okay, or you can turn that off or on. Or you can open up an existing one, you can email this to someone, you could do a spell checker, and so on. If you want, you can even get into more commands, and this opens up a whole world of everything that Excel could possibly have in its library. So for example, you can go to all commands, and if you look at the little scroll bar here, this popular commands, I don't want that, I want all the commands. And once I do that, it should, there it is. You can see here, there is a lot in here. One that's kind of fun to do in here, I use on almost every one of my applications, is an option here called Speak. And what Speak does, it's an embedded tool inside of the Office. So it speaks the cell. So I'm going to simply add it to my Quick Access Toolbar by putting it over here. When I click on OK, you'll notice it shows up right there. And what that does is that when I have something in my worksheet, so I'll put the word hello there, and I click on this, it will, yeah, I don't know if you heard that, but it said hello. I'll try to do it again.
Hello.
All right, there you go. So the computer will, and you can customize any unique feature here. So I find a lot of my students, especially when English is not their first language, with using things like Microsoft Word, is putting on a speech or read is a great tool to have in there. Now, this area right here is the title bar, and it just tells me that Microsoft Excel is actually like a book. You can think of this as like going to a stationery store and getting a book full of columns and rows and then doing this manually. So that's why they call it a book. And then down here at the bottom, these are the sheets inside the book. So this is just the first page or the first worksheet. Now if I want a second worksheet, I can just click that, and there I can get sheet number 2. So we'll click on sheet 2, and you can click this as many times as you want. There's literally put tens of thousands of sheets into that book. Over here, I would encourage you guys to make sure that you're logged in. This will give you access to sharing. It'll give you access to your online resources, etc. And then we've got our regular window controls. Now, down below, we've got the main functionality within the spreadsheet. This is called the ribbon. And it starts off with the first one, which is called the backstage. And this is actually has everything to do with sort of the configuration and the file management and all that stuff. And you'll go through this in a lot of detail in the video, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. Home, this ribbon right here, and they're broken into logical groups. So you can see here, this is the clipboard group. And within a lot of these groups, they have this expansion control. So for example, the font group in the home ribbon has an expansion group, and when I click it, it opens up a dialog box. And the dialog box just gives you more options relative to that group. So you can see here, this is sort of the font, or this should be probably called the cell, the format, the cells. This one says font, but there's more than just fonts. There's all sorts of other things you can do in here for numbers, alignment, fonts, borders, fill, even protection, which we'll talk about. All right, so that's called the Quick Dialog Box Launcher right there. And it's within a logical group. And that's what these lines are. They're all logically organized. So this is for aligning, for numbers, and so on. All right, so that's enough about that one. Now, down here, this is our named range box, our name box. Now, basically, it's helping us locate where we are within inside of the spreadsheet. the worksheet, I should say. Now, you can see that green box here. It says B2, just tells you where you are. And later, we'll be using and referencing different locations within the worksheet itself, and we'll need to know how to access that through this one right here. And if we need more space, we can size that up. Now, over here, we've got this ways of controlling the data entry. So we can cancel something, we can enter it in, or we can even insert a function, for example. And because functions are so common in Excel, they have an FX for functions to insert functions of a variety of different types. And there's literally hundreds and hundreds of types of functions to do different types of calculations of all sorts. And you can click on all, and you can start scrolling through. You can see the names of these functions. Like if you want to do trigonometry, if you want to do stats, you want to do whatever. There's just all sorts. Anything you could probably think of would be inside of here relative to doing a function. Now, this bar right here is very important because this is really where we insert our data and insert the formulas. They call that the formula bar, and they'll be asking you questions on the test about all these different components. So it means that if I want to enter something in this particular column here, this is called column A, B, and C, and so on. This is row 1, 2, and 3. And when they intersect, it's a combination, which is referred to as a cell. And there's lots. If you use the arrow key and you move across to the right, you can see here it just goes on and on and on. And if you want to go to the very, very end, it goes to XFD. Now, I got there real quick by pressing the end key. And you'll notice down here at the bottom right corner of my screen, it says, let's go to the end of whatever we're on. I'm on a bunch of blanks. So if I move my arrow to the left, it'll take me to the end of all the blanks, which will be back into column A. Perfect. All right. The ready down here on the status bar is just saying it's ready to do some data entry. So for example, if I start typing something and then I want to go back up and do something else, it says down here that I'm in a process of entering something in already. So I can't access. You see all this stuff turns off. So it's just the nature of how that works. Now I could press this one here called cancel what I'm doing, or I can push the escape key. Either one works, but you should know both. All right, let's get into the actual data entry. So I'm going to go back into sheet number 1, and what I like to do is I'm going to actually rename the sheet. So I'm going to right-click sheet 1, and I'm going to say let's go in and rename the sheet. And this is going to be a personal, or actually we could probably just call it Ryan's budget. All right, so we'll call it Ryan's budget. And we could do this for a particular year, and we could carry this on from year to year to year if you want. So for example, let's rename that again. I'm going to just say Ryan's budget for 2020, and then we could go on to say for 2021 and so on, and keep track of our financial situation as we move along. All right, so I've got the word hello here, and to get rid of something, I can just push the delete key on the keyboard to declare it out. All right, so let's talk about how to enter data into the worksheet. All right, so to start, we've got basically 3 types of input. We have a letter. We can put letters in. So when I put a letter A in and push enter, it takes the letter A and it aligns it to the left of the cell because we read from left to right. When I put a number in, I put in number 1 and push enter, the numbers are right aligned. And so what numbers are always lined up to the decimal point. That's why they come up as right aligned. Now, the other third option that entering in is a formula. And a formula has to be distinguished by using an equal key. So when I push the equal key, it actually comes up and it says work day. It's trying to guess what I'm doing here, so we don't need to deal with that right now. Equal, and then we can do some kind of calculation. And a basic calculation could be like 1 plus 1. I can just type it in, and that would give me an answer of 2. So there's the 3 different basic types of data input. There's what they refer to as a label, a value, and a formula. So those are the 3 basic forms that we enter into any into the worksheet. All right, so in my example here, what I want to do is I want to have you guys develop a budget. And again, I would highly encourage you. So this could be a personal budget. I won't get too complicated with the text for this video. I'll just call it budget. And I'm going to put it right here at the top. Start off with budget. And you have to ask yourself, well, what are the key components of your personal budget? What do you guys need to know about how to control your finances? And your finances are based on how much money that you have coming in, how much you spend, and then what's left over. So the 3 components is income, expenses, and savings. So let's start off. I'm going to type in income to start off with here. That's my income. And you might have one income. You might have a part-time job. You could name these jobs too. So I'm going to just call it generic here, job 1. push enter. I'm going to type in job 2, and I can use the arrow down key as another way to enter data in. If I want to enter and I don't want to move down, I can always just say, I can click OK here with this check mark here. That's another option. All right, so let's assume for this example, I've got 2 types of incomes. Maybe I've got a income coming from a part-time job or some other type of income. All right, once I've done that, I'm going to go down and let's deal with the second. This is the expenses. What kind of expenses do you guys have? Well, you might have, I like to put down like the big ones: housing, transportation, maybe, food. We all like to eat, right? Clothes, utilities. Maybe you got some school-related expenses or education. Maybe you guys budget a little bit for traveling. Maybe you do a little bit of entertainment, and so on. I mean, maybe you got some credit card payments, something like that. Maybe you want to go down and sort of think about all of the expenses that you guys might have. When I entered these in, something I should point out here is, like, transportation flowed over to the next cell, but just be aware that that cell right there is not, the letter N is not in column B. It's actually still in column A. It just flows over. So what we do in spreadsheets is we want to organize our columns, and we do that by putting the mouse directly between the 2 column titles here between A and B. We can double click it, it'll auto size it, or we can hold the mouse and we can actually move it from side to side. And there's other ways of doing this. If I right click on the column right here, I can go, what's the column width? And I can type in the exact width that I want. So let's say I want 15, push enter, and make it a little bit larger. All right, so I might just put down, like, for now, miscellaneous maybe as another one. Now for both of these right here and here, we do need an answer. We don't need just the data input. That's what we're going to put in for these, and here we want to know the answer. And the answer I want is, what is my total income and what is my total expense? Makes sense. Once I get that, I can start calculating things like, what is my savings? Hopefully I've got some savings and I'm not going into debt. All right, so we want to try to work our budgets and our spending controls and our income so that we have some kind of savings. All right, now in this example, we've got the axes here with all of those data points here, but then I want to keep track of it for 2020. So I'm going to type in January, for example. So I could type in Jan or January, whatever. And then what I can do now is start putting in some data. All right, so for this hypothetical, I'm going to put in $1,000 for my first job and $2,000 for my second job, and I'm going to get an answer here for my total, which we'll do here in a moment. Let's say my housing is $1,000. I got a 1-bedroom apartment or something like that. My transportation is, let's say, $400. That's my maybe you have a car, an old car, some gas, some insurance. Let's say food would be $400. Your clothes, let's say you're a student, you don't spend a lot on clothes. Your utilities, let's say $50. School is so expensive. Maybe it's $400 a month for books and tuition. And, well, that's probably a lot more than that. Let's say $100 for travel. Your entertainment, well, you like to entertain. You like to go to movies and all sorts of stuff. Let's do a $500. Credit cards, we're paying those back. Let's go $300 to $200 for that. So we're just putting in some test data at this point right here. We're trying to build a structure. All right, so we've basically gone through on how to enter in 2 types of data. Well, this is the label, this is the value. So from here, what I want to do is the third type, which is a formula. Now, there's different ways to write formulas. I could say I want a formula, so I have to start with an equal because I want an answer. That's what the equal sign means. I want some kind of answer. And I could type in manually 1,000 plus 2,000, and I come up with the right answer. And that's fine if you never have a job that changes its income, which we all do, and it changes all the time. So the power of the spreadsheet is to create a what if situation. So what if we change that to 1,500? The answer doesn't change. It's stuck. This is what they refer to as a constant calculation. So we don't want to write the formula like that. We want to take this and we want to add it to this. But we don't take the actual constants. We take the reference or the cell So I'll show you how that works. Equal to, and you can type it in like B3. So you type in a B3. It doesn't matter if it's capital or not. And you can add it to the next one, which is B4. So B4. And you'll see that color codes it so you can easily identify it and push enter. Ah, that works. And now we come up with $3,500. So I can go back now and say, what if? What if my income is $1,000? Back down to 3. So we've got a dynamically controlled, and that's really the power of spreadsheets is right there, is that we can play what if situations. What if my income changes? What if I spend less money? What if I spend more money? How's that going to affect everything? Now, in this example, I took this one and added it to that. So it's a pretty straightforward formula. But now down here, I want a formula. So I'm going to go equal to, and I could type in B7 plus B8 plus B9. Oh, it's so long. And I could make a mistake. So in this case, rather than just doing it manually, we could write it using a function. And one of the most powerful functions, the most common functions in Excel, and you probably know this, is the sum function. So as soon as I type in SUM, Excel says, oh, we've got lots of sum functions. And we'll go through some. We'll go through these first 3 in this course, and actually this one here as well. But let's start off with sum. And when I type in sum, it says, okay, that's the function, and the function means that you have a very specific function. What this does is it sums up numbers, and it's in actually 2 parts: the name of the function, and then we put in a bracket that denotes the argument. Now, an argument means that you can argue. Do you want to sum up this group here? Do you want to sum up this? I want to argue this. So the argument is, what do you want to actually sum up? And there's different ways of writing the argument. So it says here, put in the number 1 separated by a comma, and then it's got number 2, and in square brackets means you don't have to put in a second number, but it's optional, comma, dot, 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 and so on. So what it's saying here is I could actually go, I want this number, comma, this number, comma, this number, comma, this number. This is a very poor way of writing it. In fact, I think you're only allowed up to 16, or used to be able to only have 16 arguments within the sum function. And when I close the bracket, that's a pretty complicated formula, or looking. It comes up with the right answer, but it's terrible. So I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to take all these arguments and replace it with just one argument. The argument is I want the first one, the first cell, all the way down to the last cell. So I'm going to start off at B7. I'm going to put in a colon, and I'm going to go down to B16. So I can type in B16. And you'll notice it highlights the entire, and that's one argument. Now, there's different ways of doing this. I could have, instead of typing it in manually, I could just simply highlight with my mouse, just click on that and drag down. That's the easiest. And then close the bracket. All right, now that is the most advantageous way of writing the formula, because in the future, if I insert a new cell, a new row, and I want to add a new, let's say I want to type in or insert because I've forgotten that I have a cell phone, and my cell phone is $50 then the formula is automatically readjusted without having to redo the formula. So this is a far superior way of writing formulas. And that'll be covered in this course quite a bit. This one doesn't work like that. For example, if I wanted to insert a new job, let's say I go back up here and say, let's insert, and let's have job, let's go 1.5, and I type in $500, the answer doesn't work. So this is actually a poor way of doing a formula. So we want to replace that. We'd simply just go back in here and do it. This would be the quickest way. Equal to the sum, bracket, and highlight the 3 and press enter. That is the most common function in Microsoft Excel, is the sum function. All right, and just a little side note that spreadsheets were the killer applications for personal computers back in 1981. In 1981, the personal computer came out by IBM, and they needed an application that everybody wanted. It wasn't word processing at the time, because they had a lot of word processing systems. They wanted a spreadsheet, and it was the spreadsheet and the sum function that actually drove companies to buy the desktop computers to do exactly what we're doing here right now. And to this day, companies still want that because it's such a powerful tool for analyzing, and it all has to do with what if. What if we change the numbers? How is the result going to change in the end? All right, so that is an introduction to this first lecture, I guess, for a introduction to Excel. And what I'll do is I'll break this video down into a couple so that you guys can take it in lump size bites. So I will see you in the next video.